Welcome. Take it up with Jessica Lee. I'm here with Marcus Garcia, who is the VP of Sales at NIC in Contact. Welcome to the show, Marcus. How are you?
I'm fabulous, Jessica. Thanks for having me. Good to see you.
I know the call center is such a hot space right now with the work from home. Everybody's sheltering in place. And so the demand for communication platform is skyrocketing. How is business for you?
So it's been interesting, right? While, no one's happy that the world has turned on its ear a little bit, for us, there's been a pretty steady, continuity of business and in many respects, an increase in business. As everybody's been forced to move people home, a lot more people are starting to pay attention to the cloud. And as you can imagine, there are certain kinds of businesses that in a situation like we're in today, the volume that they need to handle goes up. Right? When you think about folks like retail, everybody's buying online. If you think about folks like online pharmacy, nobody wants to go into a brick and mortar location if they can get it online. If you talk about certain kinds of services, particularly public services, folks who need to talk to the employment development department or their local government to understand what are the rules, where do I go, all of that is driving a significant increase in volume. For some customers to the tune of hundreds of percents of increases in the amount of interactions that they have to take from their customers. And all of that translates into opportunities in business for us.
Now, I know your platform is native cloud kind of technology, but I wanted to get your talk on the innovation that's been taking place, because we hear a lot about different companies saying, yeah, we have cloud call center software too. So what makes your solution so appealing to enterprises?
Yeah, so there's a couple things. So a lot of people, when they say cloud, what they really mean is it's not on my premise, right? So for some folks, they'll say that they're in the cloud, but what they really have is a premise solution in a data center somewhere, and you run a longer cable, right? That's not what we're talking about. Ours is actually a native cloud platform built for the cloud from the ground up. So there's no hardware to install, none of that. But cloud as a concept is not anything new. What we've done that's really new and innovative is we've taken the whole stack of customer experience tools. So your ACD, so your automatic call distribution, your IVR, all your workforce management tools for the scheduling and automating of agents, quality tools for recording and scoring calls, analytics tools to understand what's going on and get insights, survey tools so that you can survey your customers and understand how they think you're doing. We've taken that whole stack and we've built it natively onto a single platform. And that's different than everybody else in that for most others, they'll own one part of that stack. And then what they'll do is, even though they can do it on a single contract, they'll partner with third parties to provide somebody else's workforce management, somebody else's quality. So what you end up with often is a situation where you bought from one company, but you actually have 3 or 4, or in some cases 5 or 6 different companies' solutions, all integrated and cobbled together to provide a holistic solution. Whereas ours is truly all native, all on a single platform, and that opens the door to a lot of interesting innovations for us. We call that platform, by the way, CX1, Customer Experience One. One platform, one company, one solution.
Okay. I want to bring up some of the trends, and I know that people talk about automation and machine learning in the call center because there's just so much data that you're getting. Talk to us about that part of the evolution of technology. How much automation, how much of self-service are you seeing in the marketplace from customers' expectations?
Yeah, so we see a big shift in companies who want to try to be able to handle interactions without actually involving their people, right? And that usually translates into the sort of more routine kinds of interactions. What's my balance? How much do I owe? When is my payment due? Make a payment. where's my shipment, right? That type of a thing. How do we automate where we can so that we leave the sort of higher value, more complex interactions to the human, right? So we've been seeing that shift happen quite a bit. And now in particular, because what you end up with is companies whose volume goes up by 300%, can't necessarily grow their people by 300%. So how do I handle all this stuff? And so AI is a big topic. And what's interesting about AI is when you ask people what that means, you get a bunch of different answers. For a lot of folks, what they start to explain to you is what they really want is self-service, right? And we can accomplish that in a variety of ways, either in an IVR, with chatbots, and other ways. For some people, what they mean is real machine learning. I want your system to get smarter about my business as we do more transactions together. Our philosophy on it all is we want to automate wherever we can automate, such that we don't leave all kinds of little minutia to humans to have to do when the system can handle it almost immediately, faster, more consistently, and again, leaving humans to go do the things that humans need to do, right? That the machine can't do. Coaching and guiding my people, right? Building out strategies and game plans for next quarter, next year, the next 5 years, that type of thing.
Well, I know that there are different generations of users now, and the younger generations tends to prefer texting. It's like sometimes I feel like we're in the same house, but we have to like text each other just because we're in different rooms. And so,
yeah.
What are you seeing as far as the different behaviors and how do the contact center technology adapt to the demand of different generations' behavior?
Yeah, so this is an interesting challenge for most contact centers, right? Because you've got folks like, I don't know, my mom, who is never going to pick up a cell phone and try to text anybody, right? She wants to pick up the phone, talk to somebody, and feels like she's not getting good service if somebody doesn't take some time to actually engage with her in an interaction. You've got folks like me who I don't want to talk to anybody if I don't have to. I just want my problem solved as fast as possible because I'm on my way from one meeting to another, or I got to get on an airplane, or at least when I could get on an airplane, right? Those kinds of things. And then there's this younger generation who, they're digitally native. They're on their phones all the time. And if they come across a brand that they want to interact with that brand on, say, Instagram, they don't want to have to go to some other tool to reach out and engage. They want and expect fully to be able to just do that right there, right? And if they see it on some, a Facebook, they don't want to have to leave Facebook to go to some other tool to be able to interact with some brand, right? They want to do it where they are. And so businesses today are in some cases wrestling with the challenge of how do I meet my customer where my customer actually is without necessarily forcing my customer to go down, the path that I've always gone down. And so we're seeing a heavy trend in what we call digital first, right? So particularly the younger generation, picking up the phone and dialing a phone number is sort of the last thing on their list to do. So what we've done is we've built out these digital channels, and we've enabled about 30 different channels, digital channels, to allow customers and businesses to interact this way. When I first learned about this, I can't name 30 digital channels, even still today. I can name like 4 or 5. I didn't know there were 30, but there are, right? And so it's everything from Facebook Messenger and Instagram to Apple Talk and a bunch of other things that I've never heard of. So really moving into that digital first space is what we're seeing trending up, particularly from the younger set.
And then the other challenge is that with like 30 plus apps that people can come through, you have the challenge of then authenticating, are they truly who they are in real time, right? And that's an area that I think is very interesting. Tell us about the innovation in that space of real-time authentication.
So yeah, authentication is an issue, particularly for certain kinds of businesses. Fraud is a very real thing. And so part of the problem with authentication is how much time it takes. And again, when you talk about companies whose volumes are perhaps increasing or they're just growing organically independently of any sort of global pandemic, right? the trick is, how do I grow and enable my contact center to handle more transactions, deal with more customers without necessarily having to throw the single most expensive resource that we have at the problem, which is more bodies, right? So when you start thinking about the sorts of, and everybody's called into a contact center and been authenticated, right? What's your last name, last 4 digits of your social, mother's maiden name, where'd you go to high school, whatever, right? You go through a set of questions, and what you've done is you've added, in some cases, 10, 20 seconds to the call, and in some cases, 1 or 2 minutes to the call. And when you're talking about thousands and thousands of transactions, that adds up to a lot of time that requires more bodies, right? So the faster and more accurately we can authenticate, the better. So we're seeing trends moving in the direction of things like biometrics, voice biometrics, being able to recognize your voice print much the way that we can recognize a fingerprint, right? So we know that it's you, and we can tell if it's you or if it's somebody playing a recording of you. And we can still tell if it's you if you've got a cold or you got laryngitis or you've got a cough, right? So there's these ways that we can just sort of organically, as part of the process, figure out if you're who you say you are, let the agent know in real time that, yes, you've been authenticated, proceed, or warn the agent, hey, this authentication failed, and then you move into some sort of fraud prevention protocol. But yeah, we're seeing a lot of move in the direction of voice biometrics and real-time authentication.
Great technology, and I appreciate you sharing about the innovation specifically around these points here. I want to then now talk about sales leadership. And I know you manage a team of enterprise sales reps in the West Coast. So demand is high, business is good, so you don't have a problem there. But in terms of managing the workforce, we're not in the office anymore. So how is it going for you managing teams remotely?
So I guess the good news for me is that my team has always been remote. So it's been a lot of years since I've had to go into an office every day. And the way that we're organized is we have our sales assets in the regions that they cover. So I've got folks in Washington, Utah, Colorado, up and down California, et cetera, right? So I've had the pleasure and the challenge of managing remote teams for a while. So I would say, particularly for folks who maybe just found themselves now managing a remote team because they got sent home and so did their whole team. I think the trick is to still find ways to stay connected, right? You still always have to inspect whatever you expect. And the fact that they might be in another state now or, not in the same building doesn't change that. So you still need to, either have the tools or figure out the tools or the processes to be able to sort of touch and feel your team in real time all the time, so that you can make sure that they, A, know that they have the support that they need so that they can be successful, and B, that you have the oversight that you need to make sure that everybody's doing the right things all the time.
Marcus, I think that some companies are pretty prepared to just suddenly shift with the changes of remote work, call centers having to not be in a warehouse anymore, right? But other companies have to suddenly react and find themselves in this crisis, if you will. What kind of experiences have you seen, and how has company been able to just pivot very quickly due to this COVID situation?
So yeah, it turns out I guess necessity is the mother of invention, right? So I think if you had surveyed really any of these companies, and remember what happens, right? That a mandate, particularly in certain states, California was one of those states where the mandate came down as of this day, no one's allowed to go to the office. Figure it out, right? So with very, very little notice, just a couple of days, companies all had to scramble, put plans together and execute those plans to get the whole operation at home, right? And I think if you had talked to any of those companies a year ago and said, hey, listen, I need you to put a continuity plan in place that moves everybody at home. Like transformationally, what would we need? How long would it take and so forth? I think most people would say that's a 18 to 24 month project. And I think what we learned is that companies, granted with the proverbial gun to their head of a global pandemic, they were able to react and get their folks at home. And I think what's going to be interesting coming out of all this is whether or not that kind of mindset sticks. Right? This idea that complex transformational projects have to take a year to 2 years to get done, I think we've proven that's a bit of a myth, right? There's no reason not to be able to act quickly and decisively. And the more agile your tool sets are, the easier it's going to be for you to make those moves. And so one of the things that we talk about internally is this idea of CX agility. Like, part of any business continuity plan needs to include customer service, and how agile are you going to be, whether it's because of a shock to the system like a global pandemic, maybe you acquired a company and just doubled your contact center business, maybe there's some sort of a market shift that drives more business your way or takes business away. All those things require you to be able to pivot on a dime. And the more flexible your tools are, the more likely you're going to be able to adjust to those new realities effectively without really making your customers suffer as a result.
I see. Well, thank you for sharing that. I think that you have a team that has been very, I guess, used to working remotely. So I don't expect that to be much of a change for you. And business is going good. So you are in a great position, great company, and innovations taking place to help the call centers handle the changes in the situation. So thank you so much, Marcus, for being on the show to talk about the call center space.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
There you have it. Check it out with Jessica Lee, Marcus Garcia from NIC in Contact.